Good evening, everyone. We're going to start in just a minute. So give us just a good evening, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Thank you so much for being here and be patient with us as we'll get started in just a few minutes. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started in just another minute or two. We're just working on a last minute technical issue here on site. So we'll get started in just a minute. Thank you for being patient with us.
Okay, I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for your patience. So having some technical difficulties. I think everybody should be able to hear us. If you're on Zoom or you're not able to hear myself here, please put it on the comment box or the Q&A box so we can get that fixed. But everybody should be good to go. There's some audio situation from Zoom to for us in person to hear. We should be able to be on our way here soon. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. Is the sound okay? Can you still hear me a little louder? Okay, let me see if we can work that out. Can you? Cool. Yeah, while we get that squared away, I just wanted to quickly mention some housekeeping. Um, just so you know, in case you haven't been here before, the restrooms are through this hallway right here, left for gentlemen, right for women. Also, we have some snacks right at the entrance, water, some light snacks for you, help yourself. Um, we'll have about 15, 20 minutes of a presentation, and then we'll stop for Q&A throughout the slideshow. So feel free to comment, ask your questions, and welcome to this gym. And at this time, uh, first, I want to extend a sense of gratitude for allowing us to be in this space. Also, thanking the Torres Martinez Tribe for not just us being here, but also the partnerships that we got going on from the state with tribal government. So, in this time, I would like to invite Chairman um, Thomas Tortes to give us a welcoming remarks.
Thank you. Thank you for that. For a greeting in Korea, we would say Miwen Omum Emum. That means greetings, everyone. Neto, Saus Pakik, Amiwan Piash, Amihava, Eva, Sunshi Tomiat Eva. And greetings again, like I said, everyone, that's how we say greetings in Korea. Today is April 20th, 2023. In Korea, we call that Wichu, Wisnu Machumi Petapa, 420, 2023. And I just want to extend our happiness and our honor to have, inclusion from the Department of Natural Resource, Department of Water, and the State Board, the Water Board, Sovereignty Authority, all those that make this happen to include the tribe in the communities, since we are a synergy of communities around the Salton Sea. So again, I'm honored to have the people here, honored to put this together here. I'm glad for our people. Uh, Hopefully we can extend, the knowledge and the progress that we've made. I had some earlier discussion about, the lack of knowledge from some of the community members, but hopefully today we can open that up to the community members here and show the progress that's happening, show the tangible things that people can go out there and see. I think that speaks volumes of how the sovereignty management program is progressing. And I know it's a long 10-year plan, but if we could let the people know that, that in this community that things are happening, uh, even though maybe not on the north, but they will happen and things are moving along. So I'm going to say a short prayer in Korea. So, Father, Creator, Amna, Chem Amna, Chem Mimi, Eman, Tefla Nepaiva, Pento Anmish, Chem Qualenum. What that means is our Creator, watch over all of our relatives here today. Take care of yourselves and your families. Be safe, be blessed in your travels as the Creator looks after you. And let's remember to stay positive. Let's remember to be problem solvers and not give up. Let's look at our inner directions and stay optimistic. Let our creativity shine as we work together and never let go of our spirituality, our traditions, and our customs. Espen Achima, Aloha. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Thank you, Chairman Tortes. Thanks for your words, and again for having us in this space. Um, at CNRA and the whole SSMP team, we acknowledge that this lands that we're working on, where we're having the SSMP happening, the projects, um, these are the lands of Native American tribes and the people that, who since time immemorial, have stewarded these lands and waters. In this case, for the Salton Sea, but all across the nation. These lands and waters are their ancestors. I'm sorry, ancestral lands and waters uh, of many California Native American tribes that contain significant cultural value, ecological value, and high importance. It is definitely a priority of ours, the Natural Resources Agency, the Salton Sea Management Program, to ensure that tribal priorities are heard and incorporated into our work agency-wide. For those on Zoom, I'll be providing some quick instructions. Today we have interpretation available, both here in person and also on Zoom. Live interpretation, so if you need interpretation from English to Spanish, you can select that option on your Zoom. At the very bottom of your screen, you should be able to see the interpretation icon, the globe icon, and select your language. I suggest you mute the original audio so you don't hear the other audio. Otherwise, you might be hearing both sounds. So for those that are monolingual, English only, we might have, and hopefully we do have some comments in Spanish. For those on Zoom, you will select the same option and select English as your preferred language. For those here in person, the headsets are for everybody. Again, conversation might turn bilingual in a point. So I just wanted you caution you all that you might need that device. However, this whole presentation slide will be presented in English, but just for the public that we might get some comments in Spanish. Just wanted to make you aware of that. Okay, so I'll just provide a quick overview of tonight's presentation. I'll start off by saying that this is a year's worth of progress at the Salton Sea. This is the reflection of an annual report that was put together by the state team. Everything that happened on the restoration side at the Salton Sea. It's on this presentation, but it's actually an extract from a larger document, an actual annual report that the state puts together every year. So we'll start off, and actually the way the presentation is structured, it kind of follows that format, that actual annual report. So we'll start with a general overview of the Salton Sea Management Program, the purpose of putting together the annual report, project delivery, where the projects stand, where the annual report, where the 10-year plan stands, also partnerships and community engagement, planning and next steps. And we'll also have special presenters from the colleagues at the water boards giving us a quick update on the upcoming Salton Sea workshop, and we'll close with public comments. However, I also got to mention, and perhaps if you grab an agenda, you could see that there is a question period after every item. So we'll stop. I think our first stop, it's at after project delivery. We'll have a short Q&A period there, and then another one after each of these items. So I'll start with a quick overview on the Salton Sea. And before we continue, just wanted to, just so you can have a visual reference. On your left, you'll see the English text. On your right side, the green with white and yellow, you'll see the Spanish translated text, so just so you can follow. It kind of stays about the same throughout the whole slide deck. So just for you to kind of help yourself follow through. So just a quick overview. Salton Sea is located in the lower basin of the Asian Lake Cahuilla, which filled and dried periodically over thousands of years. It most recently refilled between 1905 and 1907, and it's been sustained by agricultural runoff since then. Multiple factors have reduced the flows into the Salton Sea, resulting in loss of lake volume and more lake bed being exposed. Some of the challenges that we face at the sea is the dust from the exposed lake bed that may affect the air quality and public health of the surrounding communities. As you all know, Salton Sea is another source that has impact on the air quality of the region, not just in the north end, not just in the south end. This is a region-wide challenge. Also, the increased salinity in the waters. These are unable to sustain many forms of aquatic life. Also, loss of habitat values, including several bird species of the Pacific Flyway. And of course, drought and water availability. That's an ongoing situation with the Colorado River drought situation that we're currently on. It's definitely a challenge for projects at the sea and the surrounding communities, of course. Okay, the Salton Sea Management Program, it's comprised out of three agencies, which you see here, Natural Resources Agency, the Department of Water Resources, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Together, as state agencies, are in charge of getting the 10-year plan going on, the projects going on, the long-range plan, multiple processes to be able to assure that restoration happens at the sea and that objectives and mandates are met throughout these years. The Newsom administration, Governor Newsom, has put the Salton Sea up front as one of his highest priorities, especially to implement projects and benefit the communities, and also, of course, benefit the wildlife that depend on the Salton Sea. And we don't do this on our own. We have a vast partnership. We have different committees. We do have multiple people coming together to help us get this project done. And I'll talk a bit more about that here shortly. So what's happening to improve conditions at the sea? I'll talk a little bit about just in a general overview what we're doing. We will dive into little detail further on. So again, collaborative efforts to make our projects, to get those projects on the ground. Again, we're not doing this on our own. The state is committed on constructing 30,000 acres of habitat projects. This is through the 10-year plan. Currently, 6,000 acres of projects are underway, and additional 8,000 acres of projects are planned for coming years. Also, the long-range plan was developed and recently submitted to the state water boards for the long-term restoration of the Salton Sea. Okay, some of the key priorities of the Salton Sea Management Program is to continue to deliver and implement the Phase 1 10-year plan projects. Now start working with our federal partners on a new endeavor through the Imperial Stream Salton Sea and Tributaries Feasibility Study. Also, you might heard referred to it as Salton Sea Feasibility Study, to identify actions for the long-term restoration of the sea. This is actually, it builds off the long-range plan, which was a major highlight for 2022. And of course, continue to strengthen our partnerships and institutionalize inclusive community engagement and enhance our presence here at the community level, not only informing about what's going on, but also encouraging participation and be part of the process. Okay, so we'll dive in a little bit more into the actual report. Actually, what I just talked about, you'll find that on the executive summary and perhaps the first few pages. This is just the cover page of that annual report, and you can find that on our website, saltonsea.ca.gov. Okay, just to provide a purpose or the reason why we're here and the reason why we get this report out. First, that it's part of a stipulated water order and requires the Salton Sea Management Program to put together this report to inform what happened throughout the year. And we do this, of course, on an annual basis. And there's a meeting that we'll hear more about where we report back to the actual water boards and go through the whole list of tasks or checklist or achievements that were made throughout the year. So some of this reports ask us to include milestones completed, project acres completed, what's coming next, the status of financial resources and permits, and also departures from targeted acreages, plans to address deficiencies as well. So we talk about the challenges as well in this report. Okay, you see these chapters in there. You kind of walk through this as we continue our presentation. As you can see, they kind of mirror what I presented earlier about the presentation overview. But there's also two appendices that accompany this report. You can also find that attached to the whole annual report. And at this point, I would like to invite my colleague Mario Llanos to talk a little bit more about project delivery.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Mario Llanos. I am the Deputy Assistant Secretary for California Natural Resources Agency, working on the Salt and Sea Management Program here based out of Imperial County. Today, I'll give a brief overview of our projects, current projects on the ground, current planned projects, and just an update on where we are on planning stages. So this is just a picture here. Next, I'll go into our signature, our largest project underway now, which is the Species Conservation Habitat Project. And as you can see, there's some pretty major machinery out there. This is a dredge out at the end of the causeway, which I'll go into, which is dredging a channel out into the sea, a few miles into the sea. That's going to allow us to draw in water to fill our projects. And I mean, you can see the sheer size of this machinery. And so we wanted just to put it for context that there is a major project underway. So, at all these meetings, you hear that the land access remains an important driver for our timeline of our projects, and the sea is not a significant owner in land at the sea. So that's just one area that we are really hoping to expedite, and through that, we're working with our partners to expedite land access agreements and water rights to begin to build out our projects. But if there's one thing I learned from my year and a half with the team here is before I came to this program, there wasn't much going on at the sea, and I think when we get land access, we really try to hit the ground running. And I think you'll see that kind of in these next projects, since we've been able to get land access to these sites. Things have really ramped up here in the last couple of years. And earlier this in December, there was a Salt and Sea Commitment Agreement that was signed by the federal government, Department of Interior, the state, the local water districts, IID and Coachella Valley Water District. And one of the conditions in that commitments agreement was to expedite and establish programmatic land access agreements in a timely manner to. Can you hear me? Got it? Is that better? Yes, so we're really hoping that this really working hard to expedite these land access agreements with our partners who own property around the sea, so that we can get out and again hit the ground running on our projects to fulfill our commitments around the sea. So in this photo here, this is a photo taken out of our 10-year plan EA environmental assessment, which is pretty close to being completed. And these are just projects that you see around the sea that are currently planned or going on. And we'll go a little bit more into some of these, but it just illustrates, the wide range of activities and planned projects that are going on by the SSMP and in partnership with many partners actually on many different projects. So we'll go a little bit into detail on some of these. So the first one here is our Species Conservation Habitat Project. And that is a 4,100 acre project, approximately $209 million project. And this project is at the south end of the sea. This project is creating habitat for wildlife, for birds and fish, but also it's suppressing dust in this area. It's going to create a network of ponds that will use salt and sea water along with New River water, combine them to make a usable water for habitat, And so this project began in 2021 and is scheduled to be completed at the end of this year. And as you can see here, this is one of our major milestones here, which is a New River diversion structure. This is kind of the structure that takes water in from the New River. This is actually in the New River, and takes water from the Salton Sea and mixes it, and then it flows out into the sedimentation basins on the side, and then it's gravity fed down into the ponds that are going to sustain the habitat. So this picture was taken in December of 2022, and this is one of our major milestones for the project in this past year. This is the same picture this past February when we finally diverted water through the New River through this structure. And as you can see, just major construction going on out here. And later around this year, we have pipes that come in through here and go out into the sea through the causeway, which extends out into the sea. At the end of the causeway is a pump station that brings the water in and brings it to this diversion structure, mixes it, and it goes through this kind of labyrinth, right down the middle there, mixes the water together to create a lower salinity to sustain fish and birds. And as I said, that gravity feeds out into 3 main ponds, over 4,100 acres. So just some major components of this project that I like to go through is all berms around the project, kind of encapsulating the project, have been completed. Nesting and loafing islands have been completed. These are islands used for birds. Major earthwork, as you can see, ditches connecting agricultural drains and creating habitat for endangered desert pupfish are happening here in this site. And then earlier I talked about the causeway. So this is a causeway that extends about a mile out. And that dredge that you saw is going out a couple miles further, right? So as the sea recedes, we're digging a channel so that we can continue to feed this project through this causeway. And at the end of this causeway here, you have a pump station that's pumping all that water in, bringing it into the site, taking it to that diversion structure that's mixing it with New River water and releasing it out into the ponds for habitat. And like I said, this is all, as soon as these ponds are filled, you're talking about 4,100 acres of covered, otherwise exposed playa for neighboring farm workers and communities around the southern end of the Salton Sea. This is the area with the most recession, shallowest area of the Salton Sea, and near communities such as Nyland, Calipatria, and Brawley. Next project is our veg enhancement projects. The goal of these projects is to restore exposed lakebed areas around the Salton Sea, their native vegetation establishment, enhancement of existing vegetation stands, and stabilization of lakebed through physical means to allow seed germination and plant growth. So late in 2021, we worked with Reclamation to complete a land access agreement, and very early in 2022, we hit the ground running on, this project consists of 1,700 acres. I'll show that on the next slide here. So this project is on 1,700 acres of exposed playa, and it's going across 3 sites. One site that we call Clubhouse, one site that we call Tule Wash. Clubhouse is about 400 acres. Tule Wash is 1,200 acres, and those are near the communities of Salton City. And over on the other side of the sea, we have about 90 acres on the west side of Bombay Beach. These are what we call our veg enhancement projects. And so I know many people have talked about the bales and have seen the bales out there and are wondering, what's going on with the bales and why am I looking at bales? How does this relate to restoration, right? So what the bales are doing is creating, we call it engineered surface roughening, and it's creating or reducing wind speeds at the site. And but it's also doing, and this is phase 1 work. And so, as I mentioned, we started off 2022 on 1,700 acres, and in 2022 we completed about 1,100 acres of construction on this site. And part of that was phase one work, which included laying the grass bales down, creating furrowing, doing just site work and modifications. We'll have some groundwater pumps coming in to sustain the site for future maintenance of the plants. And the second phase here is planting and seeding next to these hay bales. And what that does is that keeps the wind down on these sites, and it you know, for anybody who's been out there, it creates kind of a barrier for the young plants to get established. What happens is when you get little particles of sand that get kicked up and brush against the young plants, it's real abrasive on the plants and really doesn't give them a chance to get rooted and to you start filling out, right? So we have, you know, like I said, this past year, we started on the 1,700 acres. We started with about 1,100 acres of work, of this type of work, phase one work, and completed about 300 acres of planting and irrigation on these sites. And that's kind of what you see in these pictures here. This is just kind of an illustration showing the, you know, kind of what's happening with the wind speed, and it really gives a good idea of you know, the site. And what we found at this site in Clubhouse that you're seeing pictures of is that we've had air monitoring systems, and it's keeping the wind down at a 75% clip. And so that's wind near areas near Salton City that, you know, emissive, you know, windblown dust that we keep down on these sites. And so we'll continue to keep monitoring our sites and make sure that they're doing the same. And these are just some pictures of just some, you know, there's obviously some existing stands of growth there. We're doing everything we can to protect them. We had a similar meeting like this in the fall, actually in December, and we heard from the community that they'd like to see more trees out in the area. So we started going out and putting in contracts for trees. And so we're mixing trees in with the low growing shrubs in the area. So projects and planning phases, you'll see a lot of this in our annual report, and I won't go into great detail, but these are some of the next projects that are identified in our 10-year plan, NEPA environmental assessment document. We do have some great collaborative projects that are being led by other entities with participation from the SSMP. The first is the Audubon Bombay Beach Wetland Restoration Project, which is a little over 800 acres. That's being led by Audubon, California, working with the SSMP. We have a Desert Shores Channel Restoration Project that's being led by Salton Sea Authority in Imperial County with some funding from the Bureau of Reclamation. And we have the North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project, which is being led by Salton Sea Authority in Riverside County, along with the Salton Sea Management Program. You can learn more about this and other projects in our annual report. And then we have non-SSMP projects that are led by partner organizations, and there's quite a bit. And I think on page 22 of our annual report, you can go in and read some of the great work that our partners are doing. IID, Torres Martinez, City of Calexico, working with state funding, and then the Living Zoo and Gardens is doing a tamarisk removal project. And that concludes my presentation. And I think at this point, we wanted to open it up for questions from the audience here or from our attendees joining online.
Thank you. The data from Owens Lake, when they did similar hay bale placement, indicated that the major reduction of wind speed is really only at the center of the array of hay bales and much less as you go out toward the edges. The data that you've got, is that based on center of the hay bale array? And how does that, and do you have monitors that are, I've noticed that you have a few monitors out. Do you have enough monitoring to see how effective that is out toward the edges of the hay bale placement as far as reducing dust generally. And then the other question is, since the iodine bush do just grow naturally, wherever there's enough brackish water for them to sustain themselves, how important is it really for the vegetation, rather that there's a benefit to reducing dust in the nearby communities, but how important is it really for the vegetation to have those arrays of hay bale when you see that there's, as we saw in the picture, that there's plenty of iodine bush, particularly out in the clubhouse area, that just seeded naturally and grew naturally. Thanks.
Sure. I think we have our project managers online. I'm not sure if they're available to answer questions at this time. I know we were having some technical difficulties earlier, but I do know that there are some existing stands of iodine bush in the area. There's also some areas that have coral beds that we're kind of keeping away from, but we are doing our best to keep away from trenching or doing any site disturbance in areas that are not emissive, such as coral areas or coral reef areas, along with existing stands of iodine bush. And we're also keeping bales mostly away from those areas, although there are some areas that do have the bales in them. So we're not putting bales along all the sites. There are some areas that, where we're taking advantage that are in lower areas or maybe surrounded by bales that are taking some of the natural water that's coming through, and also creating stormwater spreading features that are, moving water towards not only existing stands, but some of the areas that we're planting. If you notice, we had a lot of rain over, the fall, and some of those bales are still really heavy out there and saturated with rain. So one thing that we started doing was planting at the base of the bale and trying to take advantage of that water that's, those waterlogged bales to really, have that water kind of trickle down and keep feeding, those stands there. But I think I'll turn it over to maybe some of our folks online about the air monitoring. I'll have to. Do we have someone online?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, hey, this is Steven Garcia. I'm the project manager for the Vegetation Management Project, senior engineer with our program. And as far as air monitors and where they're at, we have air monitors upwind of the project areas and downwind of the project areas. So they are at the outskirts of the boundaries. So we see when wind is coming in and how that wind is reduced. And we also see when particles are coming onto our site and the reduction in those particles as they cross over the site. And as of right now, we're seeing a 90 to 95% reduction in the dust that's coming onto our site and actually settles down into the site. Mario mentioned that the bales are kind of waterlogged. They're also collecting that dust. So they're kind of turning into adobe bricks as well, and really reinforcing themselves to really block that dust. Is there another question maybe that I can answer as well? I feel like I maybe hit 2 points there.
I think we got it. We could follow up and get your
Okay.
response on that. Yeah, any other questions? Anyone online?
We have 3 hands raised online.
Okay.
So I'm gonna unmute Chris. You're allowed to speak. You're allowed to unmute and speak, Chris.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I would say that when our former assistant secretary left in August 31st, 17 months ago, we haven't had really a leader. And I am very sad to see that our new leader, who should be here, who should be on this discussion, it's their first time in the public eye, did not appear. Is she a part of this agenda, and why is she not here? We all want to meet her. We all want to be friends with her. We're all part of the same community. And I'm very sorry that we're not able to get to see her. What's she doing? Why is she hiding? Where is she? Thank you.
So I think the question was, our new, if you haven't heard, we have a new Assistant Secretary for Salt and Sea Management Program Policy. Her name is Samantha Arthur. She comes from us from Central Coast, Audubon, California. And she is not here today. Her official start date is Monday. And she will be making the rounds, but at this time, she's not here. She's still finishing up her last week in her former position. So she will be making the rounds and she will be at future meetings. And I hope that answers your question.
We have another question from Mr. Ronald Spears.
Yes, hi. Hi, Miguel. Ron Spears, President Bahia Del Mar Property Owners Association. And my question is to the status of the NEPA agreement that's being conducted by the California Natural CNRA, Natural Resources Association, and the related Corps of Engineers report. When are these going to be completed and approved for the Desert Shores Channel Restoration Project? It's one of the projects under the umbrella. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The question was from Ron Spears, and he was asking about the status of the 10-year plan NEPA document that is underway now, led by the Corps, the Army Corps of Engineers. And we do have a presentation on that a little later to give an update. But we anticipate no major issues, but we are in final review from the cooperating agencies, a part of that process. Currently, we are in section 106 consultation and finishing the last of the over 3,000 comments that we received over the summer to inform that final document. So we anticipate that it will be out likely in about June. And again, no major issues with it, but there's just been quite a bit of writes and rewrites on it based on the comments that we received. So that's why it's tracking a little later, but we foresee no major issues and see that coming online fairly soon.
We have one more question from Miss Stephanie Martin. So Miss Stephanie Martin, you are allowed to speak.
Thanks, Josh, and hello to Miguel and everyone at the SSMP, CNRA, and on the call, EPCPP. Good evening, everyone. I just would like to make a couple quick comments here, and thank you for being inclusive to the Torres Martinez tribe. I love to see this cooperation and the representation right there local. That's awesome. And keep it up because the TDK knowledge is so important. Such as the hay bales retaining water, and then y'all subsequently modifying the planting to take advantage of that. Kind of reminds me of how the indigenous people in the desert would utilize rocks in a similar. Sorry for the feedback there. I don't know what's going on there, but I'll try to talk softer here. For the shade and moisture retaining. So I just appreciate what I'm seeing. And I also really like the SCH design and concept. I think that is super cool, and I hope it's success. Thank you so much.
We appreciate the kind words, Sarah. Thank you so much. Respond. We're having a hard time. I think we should respond on the chat. I can respond on the chat. I think we're having a hard time hearing here. Okay. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Miguel.
Okay, so thank you thank you. Thank you for being patient here with us. We're having some struggles with our sound system here, but we'll push through. And if there's any follow up needed, we'll sure do. Um, Next, we're gonna speak a little bit about partnerships and community engagement. As I mentioned earlier, we don't do things alone. We try to be as inclusive as we can and look further to enhance our collaboration with different stakeholders. With that, I'd like to extend some gratitude to our partners from, of course, tribal governments, local state agencies, federal agencies, as they're crucial to fulfill the goals of the SSMP. And we also acknowledge that thanks to our partners and their continued support, uh, they're, we're able to accomplish this goals and move forward with the priorities of the SSMP program. This is a short list that perhaps it doesn't capture everybody. It doesn't capture all the names and all the input that we've received, but these are some of the agencies, organizations that have worked with us and continue to work with us, um, and hope to continue this list growing for the coming years. And also, here's a engagement schedule that was put together for last year. These are all the orange dots that you see there, and there's no actual need to like go through it but just for reference, all the orange dots that you see there reflect the amount of opportunities or meetings that we had throughout 2022. So there were different venues, the meetings such as this one, community update meetings, the engagement committee, the long range plan committee, the science committee. There were multiple meetings happening throughout 2022, with the objective of hearing as much voices as we could hear, to be able to incorporate them to the extent that we could throughout the process, or processes, I should say. Um, I think roughly it's about 30, 32 events last year. So looking pretty similar to for this year. So more to come on that. This is actually, I believe it's our second public meeting, just like tonight, and we'll continue to have more throughout the year, as well as for the engagement committee. I just want to quickly show you a picture of a meeting that we actually had at the one of our projects, the Species Conservation Habitat Project that Mario touched on a little earlier. This is actually the Colorado River Basin Regional Water Quality Control Board and their staff and board, or members of the board, to to tour the project and to see firsthand what the progress looks like, how the SCH is coming to fruition. But not only to see it, also to coordinate, to make sure that we're doing things in a collaborative way and making sure that we're achieving our goals for this project. And this is only a single group. We had different tours throughout the year. Bless you. Okay, now I'll briefly touch on the community needs strategy. This document identifies core needs for the Salton Sea communities and outlines the recommendations for the SSMP. Some of the findings are actually a bit out of the scope of the SSMP and the restoration um, deliverables that we have. However, they are being acknowledged here throughout the development of this document. This is still under development, but I just wanted to quickly share some of the work that went into the current development and some of the some of the things that the current strategy includes, which is tribal partnerships, equitable outdoor access, public health, workforce and economic development, climate resilience, transportation, and broadband access. So as you could see from this list, there are some things that perhaps don't have a direct relationship with restoration efforts at the sea, but they do have a direct relationship with our communities and the needs that our community needs more investment on. So this document is helping us highlight some of those needs. Um, and also, we didn't do this alone. This work, it's CNRA is leading the work. The SSMP team is leading the work on it. However, our consultants and community partners, Better Work Group, and Concui Design Initiative we're the ones that actually went out there with community, setting up this obelisk type of strategy to make sure to have a different way of engaging with our community in this process, collecting their feedback, taking notes, and chatting a little bit more about Salton Sea and what they would like to see out there, and help us develop this strategy, right? So it doesn't. It's not just a state written document. It comes from different perspectives as of the needs and what is necessary out there to have in the Salton Sea. Here are some renderings that were developed actually by artists from Calexico. This is actually part of the long range plan, which we'll talk a little bit more on that later. These are just rendering some models that could potentially be part of the sea. Some of this, again, might follow out of the scope of the SSMP, but these are some of the recommendations that have been put up front by the community. Here's a couple more. Okay, and that concludes the partnerships and community engagement section, and we'll stop for some questions here, and if we can start with those on Zoom, if there's any questions on this particular section. Okay. Any questions here? Yeah.
What kind of community benefit infrastructure are you anticipating putting in place at the species conservation habitat, since that's mostly surrounded by farmland and not particularly close to any communities? How will you draw people in to see the benefit from that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, of course, the primary goal of this project is restoration and aquatic habitat. That's the first goal. That's what we have to meet first. That's our priority. But recognizing that people would like to have some kind of interaction with this project, we've actually, part of the project is to have we call it a vista point. It's pretty much a space where community can come in. Actually, it's big enough for a bus to come in. As I mentioned earlier, we had those tours happening throughout 2022. And this would allow for people to go there, visit the site, perhaps not interact as much with the water or with the habitat, but just know that the project is there and have a space for them to park and check it out. How do we draw them in? That's a challenge, and that's where we kind of ask for your support as well. For if you have somebody visiting from out of town and you want to take them there, that's you got a space to park and you have some things to see out there at the sea that looks a lot better, or will eventually look a lot better than what it looks right now.
Buenas tardes. ¿El tipo de involucramiento que se está haciendo a la comunidad es de este lado de la laguna o de los dos lados?
Es de los dos lados.
¿De los dos
No,
lados?
no hay una prioridad, quién va primero, quién va después. Es una sola comunidad como región.
Y las imágenes que nos mostró de los planes que dijo usted que una persona de Calexico los diseñó, ¿se está planeado para ponerlos donde, de este lado de la laguna o allá?
Eso aún no está en fase de planeación todavía. Es nada más, es un concepto, es un boceto, por así decirlo, sin identificar exactamente en dónde. Eso viene en el desarrollo después, en el plan a largo plazo. Y también depende mucho de nuestros socios, los que son los dueños de la tierra, qué nos permiten hacer y qué no. Y va junto con eso también el dinero que se tiene disponible. Como la prioridad de este programa es la restauración del hábitat acuático y la supresión del polvo. Esa es la principal tarea del programa. Lo que viene de las necesidades o si son bancas o lo que sea el proyecto, ya viene como por añadidura y aún no se ha planeado nada de eso, es lo que quiero decir, que queremos también recibir la información por parte suya.
¿Y ese concepto está basado en lo que la comunidad quiere o el artista lo diseñó a discreción del propio?
Está basado en una lista enorme de cosas que las personas querían ver en el salto en sí, y a base de esa lista, el artista usó su creatividad y su intelecto para poderlo plasmar en algo un poquito más visual.
Muy bien, gracias.
Ujú.
So thank you so much for your presentation. A question that came to mind is regarding the relationship between any potential, I know this is all still just estimates, but with the lithium tax revenue are expected to come 20% of any of that. And I'm wondering if that 20% would be something that the SSMP program takes on, or is that still to be determined? And given the needs that were identified, some that you mentioned that are outside of the scope, I'm wondering if maybe those funds are eligible for those broader projects that are still addressing community needs. So curious if you have any insights about that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good question, and invite my colleagues to chime in here. But primarily, it's for operation and maintenance of our projects. Myra mentioned that the SEH project, it's about $209 million of a project, but it doesn't account operation and maintenance of that particular project. So that 20% will help us get operation and maintenance going. Um, Not really sure how we can make, or get some wiggle room to make the needs or amenities that might be part of the projects. But I'll let Mario chime in here a little bit more.
Yeah, that's correct. I don't think that's been determined exactly. I think we really have to look at the wording and look at what the uses could be for. I think there is some language about engagement and what that looks like, and possibly amenities in relation to restoration projects. It's like there's some amenities or needs that could be, like the viewing platform that Miguel had mentioned. And by the way, the viewing platform wouldn't be a viewing platform open to the public at this stage, just due to the conditions of agreements with the project. But it's something that could be coordinated for educational programs through our program. There's quite a bit of infrastructure needs that we need to make it, and permissions that we need to get to make it an accessible site for being open to the public. But to the question on the tax, I think that primarily operations and maintenance currently, we get this question a lot. We do not have an appropriation for operations and maintenance for our projects. And that's something that, we really need to start looking into as we start ramping up these projects. So that is a potential source, but when that comes to fruition and when that starts happening, we don't know. So we need to identify additional funding and additional appropriation for operations and maintenance for our projects.
Great. Is there any other question before we move on to our next section of the annual report? Great. Is there any hands raised on Zoom again? Okay.
Sorry about that. We have one question from Miss Stephanie Martin. Miss Stephanie Martin, you are allowed to unmute and ask your question.
Okay, great, thanks. I just have a kind of creative idea here, thinking about community amendments. The idea about conservation and with teaching people how to conserve their lands, why conservation is important, could be something that could be maybe weaved into the community amenities. Thank you.
Josh, are you able to repeat the question?
Yes, they can type in the chat.
Yeah, we're still having some technical difficulties, and I really apologize for that. It will be great if you can help us typing in your question in the chat box. and I'll make sure to follow up. Okay. Okay, so our next section, it's planning and next steps. This section uh, will mention a little bit more about the long range plan, its development, also about the um, monitoring implementation plan, and also the environmental assessment that Mario mentioned a little bit earlier, and also the sort of the new process or the new collaborative work that we're embarking on with our federal partners in Salton Sea Authority. And this section was actually going to be covered by our colleague Yvonne Wilhoff from the Department of Water Resources. She's actually joined through Zoom, and as you could tell, we're having some technical difficulties hearing those on Zoom. So I'll try to run through this as much as I can and ask for my support throughout this presentation. But starting off with environmental planning, this is mainly on the NEPA EA, the National Environmental Policy Act, environmental assessment. This is primarily a document that puts together all the projects that you saw before that Mario actually talked a little bit about. And he actually touched on some of these dates. The draft EA was published back in June 2022, and the release is planned for this summer. He mentioned June, so that document will be completed. And once that's completed, that will help us uh, get projects on the ground and help us get permitting and help us um, uh, achieve those projects that we're aiming for the 10-year plan. And of course, environmental planning is conducted following compliance with federal and state laws. Okay, next it's the monitoring implementation plan. Uh, this document, it's a regional monitoring plan for the Salton Sea ecosystem. It was actually put together by primarily the Science Committee, the Salton Sea Management Program Science Committee, but also with input from the community. There was a draft release back in February 2022, and we asked for solicit feedback and comments from the public, and also, of course, the Science Committee and different partners to help us have a more robust implementation plan. This was completed actually in December of last year. It's also translated, and you can also find it on our website if you want to learn more a little bit about that. Of course, the annual report has a sort of a brief summary on it. Here are some of the goals of this plan. So first is to identify and prioritize activities that will measure current and future conditions within the Salton Sea ecosystem. Also, will establish milestones against which data can be gathered during the long-term monitoring that can be compared. Also establish methods for measuring and reporting on these metrics, identify and prioritize the filling of existing data gaps, and describe a framework to store, manage, and make monitoring data publicly available in a timely manner, accessible manner. Okay, next I'll talk about the phase 2 long range plan. And I say phase 2 because this comes after the 10-year plan projects, those projects that we've been mentioning that were part of that map. Um, this Salton Sea long range plan was prepared in compliance of the state water order. It was actually submitted back in December of last year. It's also been translated. It's available on our website, and there's a good amount of appendices that accompany this long range plan. This document was put together with the support of tribal leadership, with community members, community organizations, non-governmental agencies, local and state and federal partners. So it was a pretty robust process of sharing and putting together draft concepts for potential long-term solutions of the sea. This also includes water importation proposals and also the review that was done by an independent review panel of a series of submittals that were received, some of them in 2018 and some of them 2021. So that's also part of this long range plan, which is also going to take us to the what's next, to the next process with the federal government. But before I hit that, I want to mention the goal and the objectives of the long range plan. This goal is to protect and improve air quality, water quality, wildlife habitat, to prevent or reduce health and environmental consequences anticipated from the long-term recession of the Salton Sea. That's its goal. And to do that, it must meet the following objectives. So protect or improve air quality to reduce public health consequences, protect or improve water quality to provide opportunities for beneficial uses, and reduce environmental consequences. Also restore long-term stable aquatic and shoreline habitat to historic levels and diversity of fish and wildlife that depend on the Salton Sea. You can actually find the document on our website. We might still have some printed copies if you still want to do physical copies. Um, and this is how we kind of embark to this new process, or how we grow from the long range plan into the Salton Sea feasibility study. So, like I said, all the work, the heavy lifting happened late 2021, and pretty much the whole year of 2022. This was a major milestone achieved by the Salton Sea Management Program. And you might say that a document does not reflect projects at the sea, but it definitely reflects a lot of effort and a lot of collaboration that went in putting this long range plan together. So this document was again put together by the long range plan committee, and they met almost every other month, and sometimes they had 2 or 3 meetings or a repetition of the same meeting. So it was a pretty robust process of putting it together. Then it was released for public review back in December of 2022. Public comment period ended about a month. Yeah, about a month ago, March 17th, actually. So um, we received comments and letters regarding the long range plan, and that will transition to the next process, which again is its name is called the Imperial Streams and Salton Sea Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study. This work it's being done in collaboration with um, all federal partners, with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which is the main lead agency for this process, or partners from the Salton Sea Authority and the Salton Sea Management Program. In this picture, you see the signatories of an agreement that was signed back in December last year. So you might see some familiar faces there. So this signifies the collaboration and the willingness to continue to move forward with the long-term restoration of the Salton Sea. We haven't gotten to the point of what's going to happen with the long-term restoration, but this is the goal, or this is one of the main goals of creating this partnership with our partners, with the Salton Sea Authority and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And I'll talk a little bit about the study. This feasibility study is to formulate an ecosystem restoration plan. And this is actually verbatim from our partners at the federal level. So it's to restore degraded ecosystem structure, function, and dynamic processes to a less degraded, more natural condition. And it can also investigate recreation opportunities, economic development, other social effects like public health, and environmental justice. And how is this study different? It formed by public input to the 10-year plan and long-range plan. So all the input that we've gathered through these 2 different processes are also being considered as part of this new feasibility study. So we're not starting from scratch, or we're not doing like, you know, going in or asking people or doing anything like, we're doing some new research for this. We're growing from what we currently have. Um, this process applies this step planning process from our federal partners, and also uh, help identify potential for federal funding to implement the actual recommended plan at the end of this study. And here's the same slide in Spanish, so I'll give that a few seconds for folks to read. Again, this process hasn't or it's barely starting. It's kicking off, and we'll be out in community pretty soon with documents to review, conversations to be had, to continue to grow on this new process for the long-term restoration of the sea. Here's a simple timeline. Uh, the study the study team is committed to hearing your input and representing your ideas in the plan formulation process. So there will be different opportunities for comment, NEPA public scoping meeting prior to alternatives milestone, and public comment periods and public hearing after release of the draft report. So there will be multiple opportunities for public to comment on this particular document. And like I said, we're not starting from scratch. We're growing from what we have already learned and what the draft long range plan had put together after a year of heavy work and heavy lifting. Okay, this is the same slide in Spanish. Let's see. Okay, and just to talk a little bit about what's next, what's coming for the Solvency Management Program. Of course, completing the phase one 10-year plan projects, which are now in progress and that Mario talked a bit more about, to advance habitat and industrial protection projects to meet the state board acreage target, which again, for the 10-year plan is 30,000 acres that we have to achieve by 2028. We will, of course, continue to work with Army Corps of Engineers towards this last push to finalize the environmental assessment for the 10-year plan and establish a letter of permission procedures to start developing the projects. Also continue to work with partner landowners to expedite and develop programmatic land access agreements. Without their approval, without their collaboration, we will not be able to get those projects going. So we need to make sure that we continue to collaborate with them and get this access agreements going. Also continue to support our federal partners with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to get the Salton Sea feasibility study going and continue to move in a positive direction. Okay, and with that, I'll stop again for questions and answers.
Thank you, Miguel, for taking that on. That was we've been having technical difficulties in our associates online. We're going to present this part of it, so I appreciate you stepping in here at the last minute. And just one thing about the draft long range plan, we received thousands of comments on that plan, and those our intention are to take those comments and make the changes necessary. That there'll be nothing kind of restudied, but all those comments would be passed on to the next phase of the core feasibility study, including other proposals that maybe didn't make it through the independent review panel or that didn't make it through, the draft long range plan that was submitted. But what it does is it creates a framework for that next process and something to start with, right? And there was a lot of work done by the committee to establish criteria and goals for restoration that will also be used for this next process. And so those comments are in the process of being reconciled, and all that will be given to the Corps as part of this feasibility study to take those comments and apply them to the long range plan. The long range plan does mention some key uncertainties. One of the biggest ones is hydrology, of course, and what policies in hydrology are coming down the pike. So that all will be analyzed in this next phase of the core feasibility study, along with some other uncertainties like ecological values and baselines and different things. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and we look forward to partnering with Army Corps of Engineers taking the lead with the state as sponsors and the Salton Sea Authority to help push this forward and also help with the engagement of that public scoping phase. So just wanted to add that. And thank you, Miguel, for taking that on.
Yeah, and I think we had a couple of questions.
Hi, I'm not sure if you're maybe could answer the question, but for the MIP report, I haven't had the opportunity to read it. How often is the water monitoring happening, and what are you maybe exactly measuring is kind of a question that I had, if it's nutrients or.
So I know currently there's selenium monitoring going on, but I would have to pass that to those on the line. However, I'm afraid that we're not gonna be able to hear them. But we'll definitely get back to you on yeah. But it does create a framework for monitoring at the sea, and it will be used moving forward. So.
Thank you. There hasn't really been any comprehensive water quality monitoring of the sea for several years, unfortunately. We need it. I have a question and give you the context of the question. During the development of the long-range plan, there were assumptions made about how much water we had to work with. And now in early 2023, we are in a potential crisis situation on the Colorado River. And we are looking at short-term reductions of very substantial amounts, at least 250,000 acre feet per year coming off of IID or coming to IID, and very likely much more than that. And that will have a very dramatic impact on the Salton Sea. And considering that the Colorado River situation is the result of many years, 100 years of over-allocation and 20 years of greater demand than the water flowing in the river can supply, it's unrealistic to think that the next 4 years is going to solve the problem. We are probably looking at a reduced amount of water to this region for the foreseeable future. And that is going to have a dramatic impact on the Salton Sea. And the assumptions made in the long-range planning did not fully take that into effect because the level of crisis that we see now was not really enunciated clearly at the time that that long-range planning process was underway. And a number of people in the long-range planning committee voiced that concern, and some effort was made to modify the hydrology, but it is more serious now than anything that was looked at during that process. And in parallel with that, so what we have is a set of concepts that are realistically all in-basin concepts, meaning you take the water that you've got coming off the farms and the minimal amount of rainwater that we get in this desert, and that's the supply for the Salton Sea. And it is going to be much less than what we've seen and much less than what the 10-year plan projects were designed expecting, and much less than what the in-basin concepts were expecting to work with. And in parallel with that, you've got two water import concepts. Now, there were 18 proposals for water import concepts. The UC Santa Cruz group that was organized under Principal Investigator Dr. Brent Haddad eliminated most of those, left 3 standing, but there's a key problem because you don't have a realistic evaluation to work with on any of those, because Dr. Haddad was knowingly hired in that position as an opponent of ocean water import and as an opponent of Salton Sea restoration to begin with. He wrote a 2002 article in the LA Times describing his opposition to Salton Sea restoration at the time that the QSA was being negotiated. And that's the person that the state chose to run the evaluation of ocean water import proposals. And what his team did was essentially eliminate most of those proposals from consideration for various reasons, some of them legitimate and some of them maybe not so legitimate. And then the three that made it through their fatal flaw analysis were we have a claim that they pulled some elements from those proposals, but the only thing they had in common with what was proposed was water import from Sea of Cortez. Because what the so-called independent review panel did is create three of their own proposals. The one they recommended, an in-basin concept, just paying farmers to fallow and using some of that water for the Salton Sea. And the two that involved water import, that group, Dr. Haddad and his colleagues, designed those two to fail. They, instead of taking better opportunities, good, sound ways to draw in seawater without doing damage to the marine environment, ways to not dump brine into the ocean, they ignored all of that. And they picked the ecologically most damaging methods of bringing in seawater and dealing with salt water for their proposals. They ignored benefits to Mexico that were put into the proposed plans and created their own plan that had no benefits to Mexico except a few construction jobs. And they used that environmental damage and the lack of benefits to Mexico to exclude their own water import concepts from consideration. And they designed two proposals that cost 10 times as much as any of the proposals that came in from outside sources. So they intentionally designed two water import concepts to fail. So what you have is not enough water to support your in-basin concepts and a completely bogus analysis of two essentially designed to fail water import concepts, and you have ignored all of some legitimate, maybe some not so good, but all of the proposals to solve that problem have been ignored. So my question is this: if the Army Corps were to reconsider looking at some legitimate water import proposals to solve the problem of not enough water to restore the Salton Sea, would the state SSMP oppose that by blocking consideration of that in the way that the state sort of essentially blocked realistic consideration of that 2 years ago when they chose Dr. Haddad? Or would the state allow a true, unbiased, and scientifically sound and engineering-wise sound evaluation of ocean water import? Would the state allow it? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And I would like to first thank you for that a lot of context that you provided. I think it's really important for all of us to know what was part of the process, and I appreciate you bringing that to the attention of attendees here in person and those on Zoom. I think it's very relevant to mention that process that wasn't perhaps as highlighted on this presentation here today. So thank you for that. Second, I want to acknowledge that the long-range plan also mentions some a lot of unknowns, right? There's things that perhaps need to be further looked into. There's a lot of uncertainties. You raised a very important one about the water availability given the current conditions with the Colorado River, but also again acknowledging that we haven't nothing set in stone at this particular moment. So I think there's further more work to do collaboratively, and invite you to be part of the process, and also keep bringing this recommendations to our attention, and also with our federal partners and local partners as well, to make sure that all the possibilities I've looked into, right? And I'll let Mario chime in with.
Yeah, I mean, this is a core-led process using their structure. And I don't think that the state is in a position to block anything that they come up with. And so I think that has to be evaluated. And I think comments like the ones that you made it into the comments for the long range plan and others around other findings from the independent review panel, and quite frankly, the long range plan committee and the state draft plan. And so all those comments are being looked through, and we'll make it to the next phase of the core feasibility study. So more to come on that. But the Corps is leading the effort here. I don't know that the state can block. It's got to go and pass all of their processes, and I think that's what we're waiting for. And one of the 13 proposals that made it out of the findings from the long range or the draft long range plan was water import, and so it will be looked at. And I'm sure that all of the information that you've provided through public comment for that process will be factored into that, as well as others. So yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
And we will take our question from Mr. Chris Krockoff. Chris, you're allowed to speak.
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. And if you will,
very good.
I'll do my best to repeat the question to folks here in the audience.
You mean they can't hear you?
No, but
Okay,
I'll repeat it.
Okay, well, you repeat what I say, please, if you wouldn't mind. This is my first chance to speak since the long range plan was hijacked by James Newcomb in December. Could you repeat that to the audience?
Yes, give me 1 second.
We good here?
Yep, you can go.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm kind of out of sync with the timing, so they can't hear me. Okay. So the first thing I want to say is that at the very beginning, the former Assistant Secretary Delgado decided to make the Water Import Study Group a private affair and not let anyone have input. Could you repeat that to the audience?
Sure.
Tell me when you're done, will you?
Sure. So Mr. Krockoff feels that
What happened was, can they hear me now?
sure. You know what? I'm gonna try to put you on speaker here. So
Okay.
we'll see if that works. Okay, give me 1 second.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Did it work? You got anything?
Yeah, Chris,
you
go
hear
ahead.
me?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Is it okay? Good. I want to say, to go back, that the first thing that we found from the Mr. Haddad was that they were invited to come down to the Salton Sea, but the public was not informed in any way at any time except for 2 days before they were coming. So we were not allowed to actually meet and engage with Mr. Haddad, Professor Haddad, who had never come to only came to the Salton Sea one time during his tenure. Then I went to I Zoomed every long range planning committee meeting that happened from that entire year. During that process, 5 months were devoted to Tetra Tech's rehashing of old in-basin ideas that had all been rejected. When it came time to talk about water import, there was one meeting about water import in October, and that was the only one that I can remember. So it was never considered seriously. Second, after that meeting, Mr. Newcomb at that meeting, we repeatedly during that 5 months process, we were never given documents about upcoming meetings. We were never allowed to participate as as getting documents from the committee. Then in December, Mr. Newcomb, who obviously is an environmental scientist, but with little political acumen, took the process into his own hands with no vote at all by the Long Range Planning Committee as to the efficacy or even their agreement with what he was doing. And he sent it out as though it were a done deal. This was all completely in violation of all the ideals of the state that encourage public participation in all matters of this nature. This was all illegal and completely wrong. So that Long Range Planning Committee is nothing more than a pipe dream from Mr. Newcomb. It does not represent a vote by the Long Range Planning Committee. It has no authority. I encourage all of you to look into that and see the worth and value of what I'm saying, the truth of it, because that's what happened. So for the state to consider that plan as a valid plan at this point in time is completely erroneous, illegal, and wrong. I also want to tell you that you all need to read Jenny Ross's, the great Jenny Ross's various comments on the process, both her comments to the long range plan and her rebuttal to Professor Haddad's water import scenario. This entire process was a fraud, did not have public participation, and is a disgrace to the people of California and also to the Salton Sea because it completely excluded the realistic discussion of water import. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
But it is a good framework to begin with. We feel, for this next, multi-year planning process in the core feasibility study. And so if you recall, there was not one plan for restoration that came out of that draft long range plan, other than a series of potential plans that came out using the developed criteria and evaluating all of the concepts based on input from the long range plan committee. And what came out of that is a series of plans that was kind of turned over along with the framework and identified key uncertainties for this next phase. And so we invite you to participate in this next phase of the core feasibility study and the public scoping process to make your voice heard and your concerns heard so that those can be further valued. And thank you for your question.
Great, thank you. And at this point, we would like to, and thanks everybody for your questions, and definitely we'll follow up with those needed. And if there's more, perhaps from the Q&A box on Zoom, we'll follow up in the case that questions haven't been answered. At this point, I would like to invite our colleagues from the state water boards to give us an update on a very important event that's coming up.
Thank you, Miguel, and thank you to CNRA for having us here today, as well as Torres Martinez. I'm Stephanie Holstage. I'm a senior environmental scientist with the State Water Board and the oversight lead for the Salton Sea. And this is my colleague, Molly Williams, who's an environmental scientist with our Office of Public Participation, and she's going to walk us through the slides that we've prepared to go over today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. We can go to the next slide. So again, my name is Molly, and I'm an environmental scientist from the State Water Board. And Stephanie and I are together hosting a workshop next month, also on the annual report and the Salt and Sea Management Program. What? Oh, I'm in control. Cool. Okay, great. Okay, awesome. So as this workshop's coming to an end, thinking about what's next. So we do have another workshop coming up next month, May 16th, 17th, and this is put on by our agency, the State Water Board. And just to give you a little bit of background on why we host this workshop when we are not leading the SSMP, we sort of monitor and assess the progress on the implementation of the SSMP. So we kind of have an oversight role with CNRA and the other agencies involved. And this is based around, as Miguel mentioned, a specific water right order that stipulates that we hold this workshop every year where CNRA can present to our board members what's going on with the phase 1 of the SSMP and probably the long range plan in the future. So we hold a public meeting, and this is the first time it's going to be held in person since 2019. It's just been virtual for the last couple of years. So this is the first time we're going to be holding it in person. Okay, and here's just some of the information. So it's going to be kind of a triple hybrid. So we're going to have it in person with our board members at Imperial Valley College, as well as a remote viewing location in the north end of the sea at the North Shore Beach and Yacht Club. And it's going to be over 2 days this time. So previously, there's a lot of content to cover, and previously it's all been kind of crammed into one single day. So we're spreading it out over 2 days this time in timeframes that we think will help accommodate members of the community and other people that might want to attend. So we have it on Tuesday, May 16th from noon to 4 p.m. And then the second day is going to be the following day from 5 to 9 p.m. So like I said, we're going to have 2 in-person locations. All of our board members will be at Imperial Valley College. And then we'll also have an option to watch via webcast or join via Zoom if you would like to provide public comment. Okay, and then as I mentioned, CNRA will provide an update on the SSMP to our board members, but in addition, we're also going to have kind of extended presentations about the monitoring implementation plan, about the long range plan, kind of touching on that, as well as panels. So we're going to have a habitat and wildlife panel, air quality, water quality, and hydrology and the Colorado River drought. So we're going to have kind of more in-depth information provided by lots of different voices, both within the community and from agency perspectives. And of course, an opportunity for public comment as well on both days. Oh, did I miss a slide? That's everything. Okay, great. So we have some flyers over here in person, and we'll also have digital versions of these both on social media and our website. So we're hoping we can get the word out, try to have as many people engaged and participating in this meeting as possible. So if you have any questions or feedback, ideas, you can reach out to either Stephanie or myself. And I think that kind of covers almost everything. Oh, the other thing is, you can provide feedback to our agency about the annual report by submitting to this email address here on the screen. So we'll also have this up online for folks to access as well. And the deadline for that is May 2nd, so that's coming up in a couple weeks. Okay, anything else you want to include? All right, any questions just about this other upcoming workshop in particular? Anything online? Okay, short and sweet. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie and Molly. Very important event that's coming up, and perhaps it's a good opportunity to learn a bit more, not just the work that the Solvency Management Program is doing at the sea, but also other work that's happening out there, other monitoring that's happening out there that might be relevant to learn or to hear about. And with that, that concludes our meeting today. But before that, I would like to provide some time for any additional comments. If you're joining on Zoom, please raise your hand so we can take note of your comment. Perhaps at this point, or with the technical difficulties that we've been having throughout this meeting, might be more efficient to use a Q&A box, and we can follow up with you all. And again, I apologize for that inconvenience. And if there's any other comments here, I invite you to raise your hand as well, and we'll get you the microphone if you would like to have any other comments. One more.
Want to do online first? Okay, we're going to do in the room first.
I promise this one will be nice. I want to appreciate that the State Water Board is bringing the meeting here to Imperial and Coachella Valley where the problem is. And we'll look forward to seeing the board members down here. And we do, I'm part of a local nonprofit that does share a lot of information about Salton Sea and has a large mailing list. So do you have something that we can share with our mailing list? I'll connect with you momentarily. Thanks.
And we have one question on Zoom from Mr. Ronald Spears. So, Mr. Spears, you are allowed to speak.
One question on Zoom.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to address members of both CNRA and the Department of Water Resources that are here tonight on the conference call. I've been involved in the Desert Shores Channel Restoration Project for a couple of years, and trying to move this project forward as the best I can from a local level. As far as the Bahia de Mar Properties Owners Association and and the members of the community. And we've come to two things that need to be resolved to get this project off the ground. One of them is the completion of the RFP proposal for the project, which is in the process of being worked out by the Department of Water, Public Works for Imperial County, Supervisor Ryan Kelly and others, Executive Director Patrick O'Dowd, and they are working on the RFP proposal to get that off the ground. The other situation that needs to be resolved is the completion of the CEQA study by Imperial County. They've initiated a CEQA study and they're almost through with it, but they've had a problem getting in specific information that they need in order to complete that CEQA study as part of the hydrology report. And whether that involves, I'm not sure if it involves the list of the water tables that were determined back in, I think, the 1960s. I think this is under the possession of the Coachella Valley Water District. And Imperial County, the group that was conducting the CEQA study to complete it, did request this information from the Coachella Valley Water District and was not successful in obtaining the information. So they haven't been able to complete this study, that the CEQA study, so we can get going on the project. So I'd like to ask the members of the California Natural Resources Agency and the Department of Water Resources to help expedite Imperial County in receiving the necessary information they need in order to complete the CEQA study from the water tables or wells that were around the Desert Shores area back when these maps were done, or the surveys were done. So I'm sending that request out to you, people that are listening, for both agencies, to help Imperial County get that necessary information. Thank you.
If I know Patrick, I know he's moving expeditiously to try to get this this information. So, but thank you. What's that? Oh, really? Sorry. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. So the Salt and Sea Management Program meets regularly with the entities involved in the channel, Desert Shores Channel Restoration Project, Salt and Sea Authority and Imperial County. And we'll certainly look into that and see if there's any way that we can assist. Thank you for your question, Mr. Spears.
Yeah, it seems that we have an answer for one of the questions that we were asked here in the audience. So you want to go ahead and read the answer, or perhaps if you can repeat the question.
Would you like to repeat your question regarding water quality? I think it was you were generally asking what was being studied when looking at water quality at the sea. We have a general answer to that question. Okay, so do you want? I mean, I could summarize, but
So my question is regarding how often water quality monitoring is going on at the Salton Sea, like what locations, what exactly is being monitored, given the unique chemistry of the Salton Sea. I mean, the results are being, I guess, published in the report. So if that's the question that I had.
So I'll see if the team can expand upon that. But the short answer to that is that monitoring is being done at selected locations around the sea, and additional monitoring and locations will begin to be sampled shortly. In terms of the parameters of what's being sampled, it's selenium, nutrients, and salinity. And I'll see if the team online can answer the second part to that question or add any other clarity to it.
Great, thank you. Is there any other questions or comments?
Miguel, I just wanted, can you hear me?
Okay, well, before we adjourn, I would like to invite a colleague of mine, Richard Brown from Comité Cívico.
Thank you very much. I'm the coordinator for our Salton Sea Outreach Education and Engagement Program. And we have an abbreviated version of our outreach table over there. And I'd like to invite anyone to come on over and kind of see what we're sharing with the community. We're sharing a little bit about the CNRA projects, a little bit about our Ivan Air Monitoring System, some of our school flag, IQ Air flag program that we use at the schools to empower and inform the students throughout the Eastern and Imperial Valley, Eastern Coachella and Imperial Valleys. And so come on over and ask any questions and just kind of see what we're sharing with the communities. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, that concludes our meeting. I appreciate you all for coming down. Thank you for making the time. Appreciate the engagement and invite you to not only the upcoming workshop in May, but also to keep the engagement process or the engagement throughout the processes that we got going on. We also have our website. We also have a listserv that you can subscribe to. We send a monthly e-newsletter out with latest updates on our projects, upcoming events, and things that you might find interesting about the sea. So thanks again. Thanks again to Torres Martinez for hosting us. And you all have a great evening and safe drives. Thank you.
And just before we take off, we have one follow-up question. The team did want to add that monthly sampling
is being done in terms of water quality. and that additional sampling is done by the USGS. And I believe Vivian is going to respond to a question that came in the chat regarding the funding that's allocated for water quality. So Vivian, if you want to unmute yourself and answer that question, I will put you on the mic here.
Can you hear me? Yes. So I'm not, Miguel, can you just wave if you can hear me? Perfect. All right. So this is Vivian Maisonneuve, Program Manager with the Department of Water Resources. So a couple of questions here. Yes, the sampling is done monthly. And we also have partners with USGS and the regional board. Sampling is done not only along the New River, but also done at the Salton Sea itself and various locations within the SCH project. So those studies aim at better manage the different parameters for water quality, so we can optimize the habitat for wildlife, but especially prevent any impact from selenium bioaccumulation into the food chain. And there was a question as far as costs. So we don't have I don't have costs right now just in front of me, but costs will include the lab works. Again, that's done once a month. We have variation on the lab work. We sometimes do speciation of the selenium. Sometimes we do total selenium. So there's a different cost for that. But we'll definitely get back to you. And of course, we have staff time included into those costs. It depends on the number of hours, for any given sample that we have to do. And we sometimes to use boats to access the sea, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes it could be over several days. So that cost may vary, but we'll make sure to detail it as much as possible at the next opportunity that we have. Thank you for the question. There's also another question about, would this presentation be made available either online or for the callers? So I think, Miguel, you will make them available online. I mean, the presentation will be made available online.
Definitely, we'll have the soon. Well, not only the presentation, but also the recording of this meeting will be also uploaded into our website for future reference. Great. So thanks again. Thanks for coming. And there's still some coffee and some snacks left. Help yourself. Feel free. And see you all soon. Thank you.